So, Rosie joins us. We're at the Tuath Glass whiskey stand, and well, it's a wee bit different. This glass, it's totally innovative compared to the Glencairn, isn't it?
In my opinion, yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, but I'm biased.
Now, how did you come about this design of glass then?
Well, it all started back in 2016. When myself and a couple of friends realised that Irish whiskey and Irish whiskey distilleries were on a huge journey. It was going to be a renaissance of Irish whiskey and an explosion of distilleries on the island. And we believed that Irish whiskey deserved to have its own glass. And no disrespect to the Glencairn, it's a great little glass. It's been around for a long time. So we thought what we would do is we'd look at what was good about the Glencairn. We would look at maybe what wasn't so good about the Glencairn, and also other glasses like a rocks glass and also copita glasses. Why did people like each style, and what was good about them and what was bad about them? And what we were going to try and do was take the best of each of those three styles and amalgamate it into our Irish glass, and that was the idea behind it.
I actually prefer your glass, right?
Now, kind of you to say.
Marty prefers the Glencairn, I think.
Okay.
Not to put words in his mouth when he's over there talking to Peter Lavery, but I mean, it's designed to do a lot of different things, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. So the principal idea behind it was that it would be bigger than the Glencairn. The bowl would be bigger, and the whole concept was around the generosity of Irish spirit. So that's part of our sort of ethos. And also we wanted it to have a flare out of the top because when a glass is narrow at the top and the aperture is quite tight, and you have a strong whiskey or a cask strength whiskey, you get quite a pinch when you go to nose it. And if you're a newbie to whiskey, that first initial bang, as the ethanol comes up, the first and the lightest phase to come off whiskey is ethanol. And that comes up and you get that pinch in the nose, that ethanol burn. That punch is quite unpleasant. And so what we wanted to do was widen the aperture and put the flare, as you can see the flare here. So what happens is...
Are you a chemist, Rosie, are you?
I actually am an analytical chemist. Does it show?
I was guessing.
I am. I did my degree in DCU in Dublin.
Right.
And I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for years. And so I used to work with alcohol, but a food grade and pharmaceutical grade alcohol.
Yeah.
And I worked in refineries refining alcohol. So I understand let's say the concepts of how it works as a liquid.
Oh, listen, a lot of people don't know this, but penicillin was pioneered in Belfast, okay? It was.
Okay.
But Viagra was also pioneered in Ireland too. In Cork, yes,
right.
and tested it in Belfast. Yes, it was. So we're pretty good when it comes to science, and I think Procter and Gamble, one of them, was originally from Ireland too, as well.
That's absolutely true.
But people think whiskey just happens, but it doesn't, does it?
No, and every aspect of it has to be thought out, whether it's from the barley, whether it's from the quality of the water, whether it's from the wood that you put the whiskey into afterwards. It's a science, and every aspect of that is a science, even down to things like if you have a cask strength whiskey and you add a few drops of water, there's a reason why that works. It's molecular, it's chemistry. The water binds with molecules within the whiskey to totally change the profile of the whiskey, which is why the flavour changes when you add water to whiskey. There's a reason.
It's ingenious, isn't it? It's ingenious.
It's a science.
Yes.
It's a science. And so my late father was a whiskey drinker, but he always added water to his whiskey. So part of this for the bigger bowl was we wanted people to be able to decide, I want to put a cube of ice into my whiskey. I want to put a drop of water into my whiskey. Not our place to tell people how to drink their whiskey. And we wanted a glass that allowed them to do that. And as I say, so if you're having your neat whiskey, the sloping sides capture the heavy esters, aldehydes in the whiskey. This flare takes that ethanol away from the nose, so you don't get the pinch. And then our foot, the base, which is modelled on the rock of Skellig Michael.
Yes, famous from Star Wars, of course.
Of course. I mean, obviously it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
And we actually were doing our designs just before that movie was made, so it was a total coincidence. But the whole idea was we wanted some Irish symbol, and so we chose Skellig Michael because it made a really good anchor for the thumb, so you could hold the glass like this and do really quite vigorous nosing and swirling.
Yeah. And of course, the whiskey sticks to the side of the glass then.
Absolutely, and you can inspect the nose and the legs. I'll show you this.
And you have one resting at the side there, actually. So come back over here, tied up against that. Yeah.
Yeah, so as I said to you, the anchor, the whole idea is really quite, shorter glasses you'll spill, rocks glasses you'll spill, whereas you can do this. But the other thing which is very interesting about this is these sloping sides allow you to, if I can do this on my hand, rest the glass completely on its side. So you've increased the surface area of the liquid, which means that it will open up and breathe more quickly. And like anything with age, whether it's a good red wine or whether it's an aged whiskey, the longer you can allow it to open up and breathe, the better the profile of the whiskey. So if you pour that, drink it, come back to it 10 minutes later and taste it again, it will taste different. And there was a quote from the master distiller, the ex-master distiller from Brookladdock, Jim McEwen, I think, or Jim McGann, Jim McEwen. And he said a minute for every year. That was his rule in terms of how long you should leave a whiskey to breathe. So a 20-year-old whiskey should be allowed 20 minutes. Pour it, sip, and give it 20 minutes. And so
I'm going to have to watch that documentary again. A minute for every year?
A minute for every year. That's what that's what he said. And by being able to increase the surface area, you speed that process up. Because there's more surface area, it oxidizes more quickly.
It's a bigger glass, okay?
It is 21 cl.
So different countries have different size of measure. Does that help?
It certainly helps down in the south because our standard measure is 35, whereas I believe in the UK, I don't know, I'm not 100% sure about Northern Ireland. I certainly know I lived in England for years. It's 25.
Yeah.
So smaller glasses works with a smaller measure. But
I just pour, Rosie. I just pour.
I was going to say, I free pour at home, and it certainly isn't 35 mils either. It's usually more like 50 or 60. But
so you actually brand these glasses as well? You can brand these up for people?
So as a company, we don't actually sell retail to consumers ourselves directly. Right. We work with the trade. So we work with the distillers of Ireland, north and south. We have a lovely group of distillers up here in North that we work with, McConnell's, Dunville's, Hinch, Copeland.
Can you do any colour? Because I like the black one.
Yes, so our black glass, this one came out of the concept of blind tasting. So when
people can see the colour.
They judge.
And people judge.
They prejudge.
And a lot of whiskies, of course, add the E150 that
caramel colouring.
Fake it up, yeah.
And they see this lovely deep colour and they think, oh, it must be aged and deep and full of flavour. And as you say, it might be, or alternatively, it might be full of caramel colouring. And the other thing then is they might see a very pale whiskey and they'll think it's grain, it's light, it's no age, it's no depth. But actually, it's just been maybe in something like bourbon or a white wine cask. And so there's no depth of colour from something like PX sherry. But it doesn't mean that it's not bold and full of flavour because it's pale. So if you can't see the whiskey...
Listen, I've tried some new make spirit that would trick you.
Yeah.
And we tried stuff in Edinburgh a couple of weeks ago that would trick you. Yeah. It was very fresh spirit. And you know... It looked the part, but it wasn't even 3 years old,
exactly.
You know.
And so the idea is that if you're doing a tasting of multiple whiskies in a pub, that maybe you might have a flight of whiskies like this one, let's say.
Yeah.
You might have one of these flights like one of these boards.
Yeah.
And you'd have 3 whiskies in the clear glass, and then you'd have a 4th whiskey, which is, let's say, a surprise. And then you say at the end of the tasting, which one did you prefer? And a lot of people might prefer this, but had they seen that it was pale, they would have assumed it was uninteresting or hadn't got depth because it's pale. But that, as a whiskey drinker, that's not true.
Right. I like surprises. It's when you go around the stands here and you get the surprises from underneath the counter.
Exactly.
But it is good. Lovely talking to you, Rosie. Where can people find out more?
So you can find us online at tuathglass.com or tuathglass.ie. We're on Instagram. But also, if people want to buy the individual glasses, different ones, they should go to Celtic Whisky Shop, either in Dublin or online, and they can buy all of the merchandise at Celtic Whisky Shop.
Excellent stuff. Thanks for talking to us this afternoon. Thank you.